And that was crazy. Please don't do that. Please, if you see that someone is playing something that's not meta, don't go to them telling them that their deck is shit, which is exactly the words of my opponent. Like, do not do that. It's not cool. Hi everyone, it's your boy Yonki's Plonky, and if you're in this channel, you have probably seen this reel right here, in which I talk about my first treasure cup. And in this reel, I lied. I actually did not record anything with Polly, who is Juan's girlfriend, because we were going to do duos battlegrounds, but we could not figure out the POV, but hopefully that video is coming. Today, I am actually going to talk about the deck I played in the treasure cup, which is Arlong. In my reel, I said how Arlong is not competitive and I also do not have the optimal build, but I ended up actually not playing just in the treasure cup, I ended up playing in another locals event. So I played 10 games in total and I managed to win 6 games, which is not that bad. Obviously, I did not top any of the events, but it's still really good because I think Arlong is a cheap budget version and a lot of new players may benefit from knowing how to build it at least a little bit. So obviously, if you're looking to play the best deck out there, look somewhere else. This is more for the budget players, and also maybe just stick around if you just want to see how I build a funny deck and what I have to say about it. The first thing I want to say is that I actually changed the list between the two events, and now I'm going to show you the updated list, and I'm going to tell you what I actually changed when I get to it. To begin with, we have our leader, Arlong. If you know what he does, that's great. If you don't worry about it, I'm going to explain. So Arlong is a yellow-green leader that has 4 life, and his effect states that if there are 2 dons under him, when he attacks, you can pay an additional don to basically play for free 1 level cost or lower card with trigger from your hand. Obviously, this effect is not ideal. The blue Doflamingo does a very similar thing from the top of your deck, and you can stack that and you can guarantee that you actually plus. But again, this is a budget leader. There are some great cards that actually work with him, so let me show you those. I'm just going to put Arlong to the side right now. The first card I'm going to show you is actually one of the searchers, and that's Kami. Kami is a little strange to me because unlike most searcher, it looks only at the top 4 cards, but it actually allows you to choose between 2 different archetypes. So you have the Fishman and the Merfolk. You look at the top 4 cards, you choose a Fishman or a Merfolk and you add it to your hand. So what cards can you search in my deck list? The first one is obviously Arlong. Arlong is a really good leader. Arlong is a really good card actually. At first I was very unimpressed with it because it does not have a counter and the trigger is kind of mid. The trigger says rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost 4 or less. Sometimes that might save you, but most of the time you're either fighting cards that cost 4 or more, or the effect is just not worth it at this point because you're going to be tapping their searcher or another card that does not have relevance at the current stage. Every now and then actually you can tap the 4 cost black Rebecca blocker and that can win you at the game. So the actual main effect is that on play you can trash 1 card from your hand, that's the cost of the card, and you can choose your opponent's rested leader. That leader cannot attack next turn. As I said, at first I was not impressed with this effect, but actually after playing against leaders like Yuta or leaders like Yamato, Katakuri, and a lot of other aggressive leaders, you can actually see how relevant that effect could be because it stops the airflow of the game and sometimes can even give you that 1 turn that you need to win the game. And actually Arlong has a pretty significant body of 6,000. With just 1 don you can make it 7,000 and force your opponent to either take the damage or you lose valuable resources like a 2k counter and another card from their hand to defend the attack. Of course, it synergizes with the leader Arlong and it's searchable by Kami because it's a Merfolk. Next we got 4 copies of Kurobi. Honestly, if you look up online other Arlong lists, not everyone plays this card, but it is the reason why I think the deck is so unassumingly strong sometimes. This character, first of all, the stats are extremely underwhelming. For 4 you get only 3,000, which is not great, but the effect is what's actually really good. If your leader has East Blue type, which Arlong does, rest any character your opponent controls. And the trigger is play this card and basically do the same because the effect is on play. This is really good because it means that when you swing with Arlong, you swing for 7,000, you tap the extra dawn, and now just for that 1 mana, you are tapping any character your opponent controls. If your opponent does not know that they're playing against Arlong and about the existence of this card, and trust me, there are a lot of people that do not know about the existence of this card, you can get away by tapping their only blocker and winning the game. I do this all the time. I put 9 dawns on their Arlong, I attack, I tap 1 dawn, swing, place Kurobi, win the game. So keep in mind, if you're playing against Arlong, keep in mind that this card exists, and also if you're planning to play Arlong, consider this card in your list. Next, there is Hachan. As you can see, there is variety in the art, so you can choose which art to play. I chose to play 2 of each, but it's just a 2k counter. The effect says that if your leader has the East Blue typing, you can just play this card. That comes up every now and then, but not really. You just mainly search it for the 2k counter. Then we have 4 copies of Fisher Tiger. Fisher Tiger is one of my favorite cards currently to play with. In the Treasure Cup, I actually ran only 2 copies, and the other 2 copies were Chew. If you don't know what Chew does, I'm just going to put it on the screen here, but it really is not that good anymore. I used to play it because of the presence of Red Purple Low, but now that he's banned, we don't really want this card in our deck, or at least I don't. Fisher Tiger has Semi-Rush, which means that it can attack on the turn it's summoned, but it cannot only attack characters and can't attack leaders. So that's really good, especially when you consider that if your leader is a fishman, which Arlong is, you can rest any character your opponent controls with 6 or less, which is most blockers in the game. This card was extremely... Also, I just realized that maybe you can't see Arlong if it's on that side, so I'm going to put it there. But this card was very strong against Bonnie, and I actually won all of my games against Bonnie the other day, which were only 2, but it still was very impressive considering that it's one of the best games. One of the best decks out there, one of the best leaders. But this card is really good because you can rest their Rogis, you can rest their other blockers, and you can just immediately kill them and get in with your other cards. Obviously, it is not that you cannot play it with Arlong's effect, but it still synergizes, and I advise you to play this card. And lastly, for the Fishman, I play 2 Hody Jones. I don't think that this card needs any introduction. It's really good, you can search it. The reason why I play only 2 is because the deck is really aggressive. You really want to see your cost 4 or lower triggers, and I just didn't want to clog up my deck with cards like Hody Jones, which are finishers, and I want to see them, but I don't want to see them all the time. I just want to find them throughout the game, and hopefully with Kami and with just drawing and the live cards, I'll be able to see them, but it's not that detrimental if I don't. Next is the other searcher in the deck, and that's the Arlong Pirates Nami. Arlong Pirates Nami actually searches East Blue cards. This includes Arlong, obviously, Kurobi, and Hachan. These are the cards that you see on the table that you can search through Nami. It needs to be a green East Blue card, and the trigger allows you to just play it straight up on the field. Obviously, you can play it through Arlong's effect, but that's not ideal. Another good target for Nami in this deck, or at least in my list, is Don Krieg, or just Krieg as it says on the card. It's a 6 mana, 7000 East Blue pirate, and on play you can trash 1 card, KO up to 2 of your opponent's rested characters with a cost 4 or less. This is really good to just shut down any aggro attempts that your opponent might have. You can also use this effect in a combination with Kurobi to rest a character and then play Dom Krieg and destroy that character and hopefully something else. The second line of text says that if there is 1 Don under Krieg, he gets double attack. It's a really good solid card, some risk cutted, I can understand why. You definitely don't want to play 4 copies or more than 2 copies, but it is still a card worth putting in your deck because it shuts down so many aggressive strategies, and also it's just a solid body that can sometimes give you that extra push that your Arlong deck might need. So this was the entire green part of the deck, and here you can see that now I'm going to show you the yellow part. Kikunojo is a card that I am sure that a lot of people are familiar with because it used to be played a lot in different yellow decks, mainly Wano decks. that used Yamato as a leader. It was a very cheap deck that a lot of people saw a lot of success with. The effect is really good because on KO, if your opponent has 3 or less cards, you can just heal 1 life card. And as I said at the beginning of the video, Arlong has only 4 life, so this is very important for you because it allows you to maybe survive 1 more turn to do that last push and win the game. Another thing worth mentioning is that it's a 4 mana, 6000 with trigger, meaning that you can play it through Arlong's effect. And this is usually the best thing that you can drop on turn 3, on turn 2 when you have 3 dons, especially when you play against other 4 life leaders, because immediately her effect becomes online. And the trigger says, if your opponent has 3 life cards or less, play this card, meaning that once your opponent has hit that threshold, now you can more confidently take damage and swarm the board and make that push earlier. The other one card that I play is Nekomamushi. Nekomamushi also has that line of text for his trigger ability, and the reason why I play only 2 copies is because it's another one of those situational cards. This one is not searchable, but also could be replaced by anything that you think might be better, and I'm sure that there are better targets at this point of the game, but I just don't own them yet. Nekomamushi's main ability states that if there are 2 dons under him, he can attack any active character that your opponent controls. This is really good against Bonnie again, because you can start getting rid of her blockers early, and obviously that applies to any strategy that uses blockers or focuses on keeping one guy on the board for some continuous effect. Next we have a card that maybe a lot of players have forgotten about, although it used to be very popular in a lot of different lists, and that's Sanji. Obviously you will be happy to play Sanji through the leader's effect, but Sanji is also another one of those cards that make you feel more comfortable taking damage, because his trigger ability allows you to discard 1 card and play this card straight from your hand. It's a really solid card. I know it's power crept in a lot of different decks, but for the purposes of what Arlong is trying to do, I believe that this card is really strong and it really fits the archetype. Then you have Egghead Frankie. Egghead Frankie is a 2k counter that you sometimes want to play as the first card that you play through the leader's ability, just because the body is okay and you just want to start applying that pressure as early as possible. The trigger is really neat. You can use them to draw 1 card, and then if you have 1 or less life cards, which happens very often because you want to take damage, so you can start spamming your monsters. And if that condition is met, you can play this card and get the draw. This is actually one of the other cards that I swapped between tournaments. Originally I did not play this card, but I changed it. Before that I used to play the 5-cost Shirahoshi, which I'm going to put on screen as well. And I believe Shirahoshi is still a really good card, and maybe I'm going to revisit it again. But I just want to experiment with Frankie, and I might even upgrade the deck by removing the 2 Nekomamushis and adding 2 other copies of Frankie. I am just not sure about this, but you have that freedom to do so if you so wish. Then we have Beige, just a really solid card played in a lot of different yellow decks. I'm sure a lot of people have survived or clutched at least 1 game because of this card. The trigger is so iconic. You can just choose one of your opponent's characters or leaders and just say, it can't attack this turn. And sometimes that is just all you need to win the game. The 2k counter is also pretty neat, and you never want to play it through the leader's effect, although you have that option if you want to do so. You have probably noticed that this is a very character heavy deck. I don't play much events, and this is the last character, and then I'm going to show you the only event that I play at 2 copies. And I have Onami as the last yellow card in the deck. Onami is just so good against Wano. It is so good against Egghead, because it gives you a character or your leader banish, which means that they simply lose the card that they wanted to have from their life cards pile. Onami is also a really good card to play through the leader's effect late game, because it just really changes the decision making of your opponent. Maybe they have prepared to take the damage and then counter the rest of the hits, so hopefully they hit a trigger or something, and suddenly you begin your turn by, okay, well, I'm going to put 2 dons under Arlong, attack, pay the 1 mana, special summon Onami, special summon, that's such a Yu-Gi-Oh term, summon Onami, choose Arlong, give him banish. What do you do now? You're probably either going to just send your life card to the graveyard or burner 2k counter and another card, and then your other hits will get in easier and hopefully just make it really awkward for your opponent. And whenever you make it awkward for your opponent, there is that possibility that even though you're playing the worst deck, they might misplay. It's really all about that psychological advantage, and you definitely get to use it a lot more locals events rather than big regionals and tournaments. This is very much a locals deck. I do not recommend to bring in this deck to a bigger event. But yeah, Nami, really solid. And the trigger just allows you to pop something with cost 5 for less. This also wins me the games all the time because I destroy their blockers. And the event that I hyped up so much, I don't know if I hyped it up, but it's the only event that I think it's worth playing in this deck, is the 200 millions vote Tamaro. The trigger allows you to discard 2 cards and heal for 1 card from the top of your deck. I would say that you want to do that as much as possible because your triggers are so good and you just want to stay longer in the game, hopefully waste your opponent's resources. The main effect is also very relevant because it just gives you one of your characters or leaders 3000 attack, and then if you have 1 or less cards, you can rest one of your opponent's characters with cost 4 or less. Obviously, you're going to be aiming to mainly rest blockers. However, every now and then you would be resting their characters that you want to get rid of. And there it is, my Arlong deck profile. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this deck profile, and also let me know if you have any suggestions on how I can improve my list. Maybe you have built something more unique, focusing more on the Fishman side. Also tell me, do you think that Arlong is ever going to be a good deck? Because there is this copium theory that I have, or yeah, I think it's just copium.
Oh, I've been married a long time ago. Where do you come from? What year to go? What do you come from? Bacalado.
Because we see that now the more I talk about it, the more I talk myself out of it. You know what? Just tell me, why do you think that Arlong is shit and I should stop playing it? Which is something that I actually happened in the second local that I went to on Sunday. And that was crazy. Please don't do that. Please, if you see that someone is playing something that's not meta, don't go to them telling them that their deck is shit, which is exactly the words of my opponent. Like, do not do that. It's not cool. Like, I know that my deck is not good. I am building something else. Now, Juan is actually helping me with it because he attended the Liverpool regionals, and maybe he'll tell you about it in the next episode of Ops. Also, thank you for the support on that video. It's amazing how well it was received. I know that there aren't a lot of comments under it, but a lot of people reached out to us telling us that they like the idea and they like our unique take on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Progression series. And we see that people actually watched it. I think a lot more people watched it than what we initially expected. So again, thank you so much. Let me know what you think about this deck. Let me know what's your pet deck that you know is bad but you refuse to stop playing. Have a good one.